What would you do if the person who raised the love of your life called you a parasite in front of everyone you cared about? Emily stood frozen in the dining room, the clatter of forks and the hum of conversation replaced by a deafening silence. Her mother-in-law, Margaret, had just unleashed a tirade that sliced through the air like a knife. "You live off my son," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You're nothing but a leech, Emily, contributing nothing while he slaves away." The words stung, not just for their cruelty but because they were delivered at her husband David's birthday dinner, surrounded by family and friends who now stared, wide-eyed, at the spectacle. Emily's heart pounded, her face burning under the weight of accusing gazes. She wanted to scream back, to defend herself, but her throat tightened. David, seated beside her, reached for her hand under the table, his grip firm but trembling. He opened his mouth to speak, but Emily squeezed his hand, silently pleading for him to stay quiet. She wouldn't let this moment define her. Not tonight. Not ever. She hadn't always been the quiet one. Growing up in a small town, Emily had been the girl with dreams too big for her circumstances. Her parents worked tirelessly, her father at a factory, her mother as a seamstress, but money was always tight. Scholarships got her through college, where she met David, a kind-hearted engineering student with a laugh that made her feel safe. They fell in love, built a life, and married despite Margaret's disapproval. Margaret, a wealthy widow with a sharp tongue, had never warmed to Emily. To her, Emily was an outsider, unworthy of her only son. The accusation wasn't new. Margaret had whispered it in private for years, but tonight's outburst was different. It was public, deliberate, designed to humiliate. Emily forced a smile, her voice steady as she replied, "Margaret, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's talk about this another time." The guests shifted uncomfortably, and David's sister, Clara, tried to change the subject with a nervous laugh. But the damage was done. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. As the evening ended and guests trickled out, Emily retreated to the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't a leech. For years, she'd worked as a freelance graphic designer, her income modest but steady. She'd sacrificed late nights to care for David when he was laid off, supported his dreams of starting his own tech company, and kept their home running smoothly. Yet Margaret saw none of it. To her, Emily's contributions were invisible because they didn't come with a paycheck that rivaled David's. David found her in the kitchen, his face etched with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Em. I should have stopped her." Emily shook her head, her eyes glistening. "It's not your fault. She's always hated me." But as she said it, a spark of defiance flickered within her. She wasn't going to let Margaret's words define her truth. Not anymore. The next morning, Emily woke with a plan. She'd been working on something in secret for months, something even David didn't know about. In her spare time, between client projects and household chores, she'd been developing an app, a tool to help small businesses manage their finances. It was her passion project, born from watching her parents struggle with bookkeeping as a child. She'd poured her heart into it, coding late into the night, teaching herself skills she never thought she'd master. The app was nearly ready for launch, and she'd secured a meeting with a local investor next week. If it succeeded, it could change everything. But then came the twist she hadn't expected. While sorting through old boxes in the attic, looking for documents to prepare for her pitch, Emily found a letter tucked inside a dusty photo album. It was addressed to her, in David's handwriting, but dated 5 years ago before they were married. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter was a confession. David wrote about how Margaret had pressured him to leave Emily, calling her a distraction from his potential. He refused, but the letter revealed something else. Margaret had offered him a trust fund if he ended the relationship. David had torn it up, choosing love over money, but the letter shook Emily. It wasn't just Margaret's disdain she was fighting, it was a calculated effort to erase her from David's life. The discovery shifted something in Emily. She'd always seen Margaret as a hurdle, but now she understood the depth of her resentment. It wasn't just about money or status, it was personal. Margaret saw Emily as a threat to her control over David. Instead of anger, Emily felt a strange clarity. She wouldn't fight Margaret with words or outbursts. She'd fight with action. The day of the investor meeting arrived, and Emily walked into the sleek office with her head high. The investor, a sharp-eyed woman named Lena, listened intently as Emily pitched her app. She demonstrated its features, explained its potential, and shared her story, not just the technical side, but why it mattered. Lena leaned forward, intrigued. "You've got something special here," she said. "I'm in. Let's talk numbers." By the end of the meeting, Emily had secured funding to launch her app, with Lena offering to mentor her through the process. When Emily told David that evening, his jaw dropped. "You did this? All on your own?" he asked, pride shining in his eyes. She nodded, showing him the app on her laptop. "I wanted to prove it to myself first," she said. "And maybe to someone else, too." David pulled her into a hug, whispering, "You're incredible." The real test came a month later, at a family gathering Margaret hosted. Emily knew the moment was coming. She heard whispers that Margaret was planning another jab. As they sat around the living room, Margaret's voice cut through the chatter. "So, Emily, still tinkering with your little hobbies?" The room tensed, expecting another scene. Emily smiled, calm and unshaken. "Actually, Margaret, I launched an app last week. It's already got 1,000 downloads and a deal with a major tech incubator." She pulled out her phone, showing the app's sleek interface. The room buzzed with surprise, and Clara gasped, "Emily, that's amazing." Margaret's face froze, her lips parting but no words coming out. Then came the unexpected. Lena, the investor, stepped into the room. Emily hadn't known she'd be there. David had invited her, wanting to surprise his wife. Lena shook Emily's hand warmly, then turned to Margaret. "You must be proud of your daughter-in-law," she said. "She's going to change the game for small businesses. I've rarely seen such grit." Margaret's smile was tight, her eyes flickering with something between shock and begrudging respect. As the evening wound down, Margaret pulled Emily aside. "I misjudged you," she said, her voice low. It wasn't an apology, but it was close. Emily nodded, choosing grace over gloating. "We're family, Margaret. I just want us to see each other clearly." For the first time, Margaret's gaze softened, and Emily felt a weight lift. In the weeks that followed, Emily's app gained traction, earning praise from users and industry blogs. But more than the success, what mattered was what it represented. Emily had turned pain into purpose, proving her worth not just to Margaret, but to herself. She and David grew closer, their bond strengthened by honesty and shared dreams. Even Margaret began to change, joining them for dinner without barbs or judgment. The story wasn't about revenge or triumph over an enemy. It was about resilience, about finding strength in the face of doubt. Emily hadn't just silenced her critics, rewritten her own narrative. And in doing so, she'd shown that the loudest voices aren't always the truest. Sometimes, the quiet ones, working in the shadows, have the power to change everything.